Well, how's it going, everybody? Today we are taking a look at the 28th question in the New City Catechism, which is, what happens after death to those not united to Christ by faith? And I'm just going to let you know right off the bat, as with most of these questions, we're not going to be able to exhaust the topic, but this one in particular, I want you to know that we're not going to try to navigate too much of this on a social media platform, because I think that social media is not the place to really have robust discussion. So what I hope to do in this lesson is give you a jumping off point so that you can have discussions in your small groups, with your friends, with your family, and that we can start that conversation together with a good foundation, but that really we should be engaging in a lot of these questions together in person, because on social media there is a lot of room for being misunderstood, for taking things out of context, and I certainly don't want to do that with this lesson in particular. So I just wanted to lay that out right at the beginning, and I hope that we can lay a good foundation for having good conversations about what happens after death to those not united to Christ by faith. So let's get into it. Bear with me as I kind of wrestle through this with you guys. Let's jump right in, though, to the New City Catechism, because then if you want to take issue with that, you can take issue with those theologians over there, and then I'm off the hook. But what we're looking at is the New City Catechism website, great resource. Check it out. What happens after death to those not united to Christ by faith? They will be cast out from the presence of God into hell to be justly punished forever. And I would suggest maybe looking at each one of those sections, doing your own research and your own study on what does the Bible say about this. But this idea that they will be cast out of the presence of God, we'll get to this as we move through this. But before we leave the New City Catechism website, which is a great resource, you can check out the Bible verse over here. Do that, certainly, but also read some of these commentaries. I think that they've done a really good job of providing really good resources for us on the New City Catechism website. They usually provide an older commentary and then a newer commentary. So please, particularly with this question, go over there and read the commentaries that they have provided. And then, of course, I'm using the kids version because that's what I like to do. So let's jump into the passage for this question, and I want to point out a couple of very important things. The passage here, John 3:16, very famous. The context is Jesus' conversation with Nicodemus about eternal life and kind of what that means. And so Jesus launches into this. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. And that is the context for what he will later talk about, which is God's judgment. So God's love is seen in the context of his justice. And the tendency we have when trying to handle the tough questions about hell and what hell is what I see is some people want to emphasize God's love, or they want to emphasize God's justice, but the Bible doesn't allow us to do that. The Bible is challenging us to hold both of those things in harmony with each other, because they are in harmony within the character of God. His justice does not override his love, and his love does not override his justice or his holiness. So that is the context. I know I jumped off the Bible passage there, but I don't want that to be missed, that for God so loved the world. This whole passage is in the context of love. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but in order that the world might be saved through him. Whoever believes in him is not condemned. There you are. Whoever believes in him is not condemned, but whoever does not believe is condemned already. And that is also a very important way of saying this. Where is the condemnation? It's already on us. We live in a state of condemnation. And so there are those who are not condemned, and there are those who are already condemned. They sort of remain condemned because he has not believed in the name of the only Son of God. And this is the judgment. The light has come into the world, and the people loved darkness rather than the light because their works were evil. What is God doing about the evil in the world? For everyone who does wicked things hates the light and does not come to the light, lest his works should be exposed. But whoever does what is true comes into the light, so that it may be clearly seen that his works have been carried out by God. And this is the tension that we are in as people. Do we want to come into the light, or do we want to remain in darkness? And God, it appears, has given us that choice. And so let's jump down a little bit and get a little bit more into this. Verse 36. Whoever believes in the Son has eternal life, like we were talking about. Whoever does not obey the Son shall not see life, but the wrath of God remains on him, remains on them. And so maybe I'm making more of this, and this is where, again, I'm not going to try to launch a whole theology or the doctrine of hell here. I'm just pointing out that earlier the idea of being condemned already, if we're not under the saving grace of Christ, being condemned already, or the wrath of God remaining on someone. So our state, we begin in a state of sin, and God's plan is to rescue us from that sin. But there are some people who are saying, you know what, I'm more comfortable in the darkness. And that, I think, is where we get into this question of hell. And what is it? And again, I don't necessarily want to give you I'm trying to handle that question very sensitively on a platform that I don't think is intended for that. So I hope, again, that this can be a jumping off point for discussion, and I'm trying not to get too crazy into that. But look, if I go back to the New City Catechism question, they will be cast out of the presence of God into hell, which is the place we call that is separate from God, to be justly punished. Now, it seems as though in God's infinite love, in his infinite wisdom, his foreknowledge of people's choices, he knew that there would be people who did not want to live in eternity in the presence of God. They hate God, they love darkness, and so out of love, God provides a place for them. We call this place hell, where God says, okay, if you love darkness and you hate my presence, then I have provided a place for you. And that is a place that is out of the presence of God. It is a place we call hell. And that this allows God's justice to remain, because God cannot turn away from sin and say, oh, no big deal. God is holy and God is just. He is also loving. And we cannot look at God's love and God's justice as though they are contrary. They are in harmony with each other. That may be hard for us to understand, but that doesn't mean it's not true. So that would be my encouragement to you all, is although this might be a difficult thing to jump into, that we would allow what we know clearly to be true about God to guide our conversation. And we know God is love, and we know God is holy and just. So in his love, he has done these things. He has not only saved us, but he has also allowed some other people to make a different choice, which is kind of hard. But that he is also just. And that when we look at the evil in the world and we wonder, what is God doing about the evil in the world? That his justice will be done. That the evil is punished. That Jesus took on that punishment for those who are saved. And that ultimately God will punish evil. It's not that he's not doing something about it. And so when the guilty go free and the innocent are put in chains, we cry out to God for his justice. We also cry out to God for his love. And thanks be to God that he is both love and just. So I hope, and that's the foundation, his love and his justice. That's the foundation for the conversation. And I hope that can guide us. Again, not always easy to wrestle through these things, but be encouraged, take heart, read other passages, and have these discussions in your small groups, with your family, with your friends, and stuff like that. And hopefully this can serve as a help for you. So I look forward to being with you in that next one.